On the 21st of February, 1916, German artillery batteries started to fire. In Erich von Falkenhayn's words, nobody on the opposing force should feel safe, no supply route untouched, and every designated sector must be bombarded. Around 1 million shells struck the Verdun region and its forts. The communications to the front line were severed, and the French command was in disarray. German planes flew over to gain air superiority and were uncontested by the French pilots. Later during the day, when the artillery was silent, the German infantry with flamethrower units crept in.
This is a Flammenwerfer. It werfs Flamme.
Right you are, Hans. The Flammenwerfer, or as the English speakers call it, the flamethrower, was a demoralizing piece of weaponry that was feared by those who were on the receiving end of it. Those who were captured with it weren't shown any remorse and were executed on the spot. Moving on. On the third day, the Germans captured multiple villages, one of which was caused by a bad case of friendly fire by the French batteries. They were planning to advance the next day, but a fraction of the force was bogged down by artillery. The rest of the force captured even more territory and forts, including Fort Douaumont, which was deemed to be one of the strongest strongholds. Though the statement was untrue, as most of the guns have been stripped away from it and was only defended by 59 men, including a warrant officer. No shots were fired as the French surrendered immediately. This victory was a morale boost for the Germans, and they turned it into a staging area. Many of the French troops have been injured, captured, or died from the first assault, but where are the reinforcements? Due to the railway being destroyed by the Germans, logistics became an obstacle for the French army. They had to find another way to supply the front line. French officers ordered for a caravan of trucks numbering in the thousands, which brought men and munitions to where they were needed. This was vital and helped prolong their defense of the area. Once the snow thawed and the terrain became a swamp, the Germans had to reposition their artillery to compensate for the space between them and the enemy. Their advance slowed down. This gave the French more time to replenish, bringing 21,000 tons of ammunition and 90,000 troops. The Germans tried to target the French batteries on the west bank of the Meuse River, but it didn't stop the French from retaliating back and killing more German troops. So they tried to advance to the French battery on Hill 304, but were halted by determined enemy troops on Morteaume. Neither side could keep the hill, and the fight devolved into a stalemate, and the area between them became no man's land. After April, more land was lost, including Fort Vaux, where the French were so dehydrated from the siege they had to drink their own urine due to them running low on water. The living quarters were packed with people, so illnesses like dysentery spread and they couldn't sleep due to the humidity. It negatively affected their morale, causing them to surrender. However, on June 4, on the Eastern Front, the Russians went on the offensive in Volhynia, present-day Ukraine. Some of the German troops had to be diverted from Verdun to back up the Austro-Hungarians. On the 21st, Germany relaunched their offensive and was stalled again by the French. The situation on the east side of the river kept getting more problematic, but the field commander, Philippe Pétain, was told to hold his ground at all cost. On July 1, the Battle of the Somme began, which pressured the Germans, even more, to divert even more troops to defend. Things kept going downhill for the Germans as their chain of command was not cooperating. The king's son, Prince Wilhelm, the general in the area, wanted to take over the entirety of Verdun. While Erich von Falkenhayn, the one who persuaded to attack the region, wanted to not take it to bleed out the French army. He keeps the prince at bay, not sending a sufficient amount of men over. This made it difficult to replace or exchange the battle-weary troops. They struck Fort Souville on the 11th using artillery-launched gas to drive out the defenders, but they held strong using gas masks. The incursion failed and now the French are on the offensive. Most of the skirmishes after that were taking back key areas building up to the battle on the 24th of October, where the French unleashed a full-scale artillery-supported assault to reclaim Fort Douaumont. They didn't stop there, as after their victory they went for Fort Vaux as well, capturing it in November. The Battle of Verdun was considered to have ended on December 18, 1916, but there was still fighting from time to time. Around 735,000 troops from both sides perished during this battle. About 0.02% of the casualties in the whole war. All of this occurred because of a series of coincidences that lead to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Time itself is an unending set of falling dominoes, and each of those individual pieces can change the course of history, as shown how the Great War influenced the present political landscape, technology, and media at the cost of millions of lives.